Hello and welcome to jasonnewland.com. My name's Jason Newland and this is Let Me Bore You to Sleep. Ooh. Please only listen when you can safely close your eyes. I thought today, which is Sunday, the 25th of May 2025, I'd go through I'd kind of do a little bit of work on my website whilst talking to you. Give you a little bit of an insight into how the website, building stuff works. So I use trying to think if anything's happened before was it raining this morning? A bit rainy. Anything else happening? It's not a lot. Not much happened really. I didn't do a recording yesterday, but I did work on my website. That's kind of the reason why I wanted to sort of do this, just so you get an idea. It takes time. It takes a bit of time to go through the process. Now, it's not just, I hope you are, by the way, it's not just, I feel like I'm just talking at you instead of with you. All the little birdies singing joyfully. We say that, don't we? Oh, they're so happy singing. You see the little birds in their nest, the little pups or chicks or whatever they are, singing happily, joyfully in springtime. The reality, they might be screaming, "I'm starving! Get me some food! I need changing! I need my nappy changing!" You know, they might be worse than Vinny. I mean, he can't go more than 10 seconds without seeing me. Yet he pretends he doesn't even like me. He just shouted out, "I'm not pretending." So let's have a look. I had a weird dream last night. Weird dream. I'll talk through it. Maybe I'm still asleep. So I'm in this place that looks familiar to me. And I'm telling everybody, it looks familiar. I've been here before. I might not have said before like that. I might have just said before, but in my memory it was before. I've been here before. That's my accent I had back then. But it was kind of me now, talking about how I'd been there when it could have been when I was 2 or 3 or 4, so I don't remember, but I just remember the place. And I'm asking everyone, were you here in 1973? Was you about then? I was going around those places with shops. I said, was you there? And people were saying, I wasn't, but my granddad was. I said, well, go and get him then. He said, have you got a shovel? I said, why? And then I realised that he was being funny, and actually wasn't very funny, and I'm like, a bit rude really. And so I'm not digging him up. I mean, it's rude. Anyway, I did have a shovel, but he kind of, the joke was on him really. Anyway, nobody knew. And I said, has anyone got any pictures? You got any pictures of this place when, 1973, 1974, maybe 1972, maybe 1975, I don't know, just around that time? and I go into this kebab place. I think it's like a kebab place, or they sold food. I must have been thinking about food. Maybe I was hungry in my sleep. Cakes or food, some kind of food. Not food as in stuff you get from groceries that you have to like mix together and cook and ugh. I mean stuff you just put in your mouth and chew it, like yum yum yum. That kind of food. Cakes, sausage rolls, bits of pizza. Why is my question? This is not really related, but why in some countries do they call pizza pie? How on earth did that come about? Pizza pie. A little bit of pie. No, a pie is pastry with a filling. Doesn't have to be savoury. Doesn't have to be meat. It can be vegetables. Vegetables. I like to feed vegetables to my tortoise. It doesn't have to be. It can be fruit. It can be apple. It can be... I know apple is a fruit. But, you know, a pie is pastry underneath and pastry on top, and inside is a filling of some kind. Doesn't really matter what it is. It can't be a pie unless it's... Mind you, some people class it as a pie if it's just got a covering on, a pastry. No, it has to have the bottom pastry as well, because technically you should be able to eat it whole. You know, just have the pie in your hand. Unless it's a really big pie, then maybe, I mean, I guess in the past people would just eat a bit and then just share it around, and everyone would have a little, maybe they have their own little hole that they'd suck on. I don't know, it sounds weird, but you know, it depends how big the holes were. And I suppose technically, maybe on like a construction site or something, the people in the canteen, because they couldn't necessarily get to the construction people, so they'd maybe just have a wall, and they'd put parts of the pie through the wall, have a little hole, and they put the parts of the pie through the hole, and then they could just feed the workmen and women and work people. It's really weird, because I've been technically raised, but I've been brought up to just say the word workman, postman, milkman. You know, just, it's not about men. It's just the term, and that's what I grew up learning, those terms. And when I was a kid, I never saw a female delivering post, never saw a female delivering milk, never saw a female on a building site, never saw a female welder, never saw a female in fixing cars. And it was just the way society was back then. I'm not saying that there wasn't any. There probably was one or two in the world, but it's not being rude or dismissive by using that term, although some people might think it is. And I would, yeah, it's very difficult. I feel sorry a little bit for people that care about stuff like that, because I kind of don't. And I know that I'm not out to, you know, upset people generally. But it's got to be very hard for, especially like politicians and celebrities, to constantly have to watch what they say in order so they don't get cancelled because they've said the wrong thing, or they've used the wrong pronoun. I mean, I couldn't give two hoots about pronouns. I don't care. I call Vinny a girl constantly. It confuses a lot of the other dog walkers. I say, come on, girl, good girl. But I remember one said, but he's a boy. Yeah, but you called him girl. Like I didn't know I'd called him a girl. Yeah, I do know what I say. I'm aware of the words I'm using. I'm not always pleased with the words I use, and I'm often surprised. But I'm aware of the words that are coming out of my mouth. I'm just not always aware of what's going to come out of my mouth. Word-wise, that is. But often I am, and if I say, come on, it's good girl, it's because I'm just calling him a girl, because it's fun for me. So misgendering is something that I have a lot of deep-seated pleasure being involved with. And I've been doing it with humans for a long time, you know, going back since I was a kid, calling a boy a girl and a she, and calling a girl he, and calling the teacher, the male teacher, Mrs. or Miss, and the female teacher, Sir. I enjoyed doing stuff like that because it amused me, passed the time. But now it's a little bit more serious, so I wouldn't purposely, you know, out to. I used to be out to upset. It wasn't that I was out to upset people. I like making people laugh. Because this hasn't got a lot to do with the original subject that I was talking about, which was building my website. I ended up talking about our building site with some glorious ways of passing the food to the construction workers. Very glorious it was. If the weird why I call it glorious, because actually both of the ladies, and they were ladies for some reason, but the canteen staff, they were ladies. I'm sure, you know, in the 70s and 80s there was also lots of male canteen staff and dinner men. I'm sure there was lots of them. There wasn't. So it was, they were both called Gloria, that were passing this food through these holes to the work people, construction workers. And it's weird because I've worked with a Gloria in a canteen, and also a different Gloria worked in a canteen it was Gloria and Brenda that worked in this canteen that I used to eat in as well. It's really weird. But yeah, so they had Gloria, and it's like, right Glory. I don't know why short. Gloria is not a long name, is it? Gloria. It's like, why Jason? It's not long, but put J. Right, Jay? Around here, no one knows me as Jason. Jay. I phoned someone up. Literally, someone had phoned me up. I phoned them back 5 minutes later to see what they want, because I don't answer my phone. And hello, I said, yeah, hi, it's Jason. Who? Jason. Huh? Mum, do you know anyone called Jason? No. Dad, do you know anyone called Jason? No. Bob, do you know anyone called Jason? No. And you hear them go out the door, shouting to the neighbour, do you know anyone called Jason? And I said, Jason, Vinny's dad. Oh, Jay. And then she shouts, Mum, it's Jay. Oh, Jay. Dad, it's Jay. Oh, Jay, why didn't you say Jay then? Bob, it's Jay. Who's Jay? I don't know. Why are you telling me? Well, I just thought you might be interested in hearing about it. So I'm just a plumber. I'm trying to fix your toilet. Okay, I haven't got to be rude. Okay, all right. You going to go and tell your neighbour? Nah, I can't be bothered. But you're being rude then, aren't you? Now, if you're not going to tell your neighbour might be worried. Just concerned, like, you know, talking to their family. Who's Jason? Who's this Jason? Why didn't you let them know it's Jay? It's just like, it's not a hard name to remember. Jason. Among the most important names on the planet. Arguably. I've got a neighbour who's called Jason. I didn't know, he was a dog walker. But he doesn't go by that name. He uses his middle name. And I said to him, why? Because another neighbour told me. She said, oh, I know someone called Jason. I said, do you? I said, yes. I said, I thought she was going to say, you. And we'd both roll around. And she said, no, him next door. I said, that's not his name? She said, it is. I said, it's not. He told me his name was whatever it is. She said, no, that's his middle name. His real name's Jason. His proper name's Jason. I said, why doesn't he use it? She said, I don't know, but don't mention it. He's a bit touchy about it. So the next day I see him in the park, and for some reason the first thing I say is, you right, Jason? I don't know, now, to me, if his name, for example, was, I don't know, if his first name was whatever, a name that he didn't like, I was going to say Diddy, but like a name that he didn't like, that was obviously, you know, quite an unpleasant name, or I don't know, or a name that any other name, I could kind of go along with it. But that's my name. And there's nothing unpleasant about my name. It's quite a cool name, actually. It means healer. In Greek mythology, healer, or healing hands. That healing hands description does not work in court, by the way. But my name is Healing Hands. I was just testing. No, doesn't work. But healer, I'm a healer. With my tongue. I used to use that as a chat-up line, so I'll stop. When I was younger, yes, I'm a healer. I honestly did. When I found out, I was probably in my 20s, and I'd say when I was talking to ladies, you know, when I still had testosterone inside me, like, yeah, my name's Jason, healer, healing hands. And I'd rub my hands together, and they would walk away. So it wasn't a very good chat-up line, really, to be fair. I think that probably one of the best chat-up lines I had, or beginning, I don't like the term chat-up line, it sounds a bit dodgy, really, but a beginner to a conversation, or a beginner to a kind of interaction, used to be my tattoo on my forearm. So I'd be in a nightclub or be in a comedy club, and the amount of women that would come up to me and say, "What's that?" And I'd be hilarious and say, "It's an arm," and of course they would walk away. But then I realised, well, that's not working, is it? After about 10 years of doing that, I thought, it's time to start learning. So I thought, okay, I'll do something different. And I'd say, what's that? I said, it's a tattoo, innit? So that was another wasted 10 years. And then when I got to my 40s, I thought, like, I realised they didn't really want me to say it's an arm or it's a tattoo, because that just made me look a bit, for some reason, it wasn't creating the desired effect. There was no emotional attraction being kind of created or moulded by saying that. You know, I mean, I once had someone come to me after a gig, knocked on the door, not where I live, but they had this like chain. It was like it was a room up above the place, and I was in there with the other comedians, hoping that they'd one day accept me, or at least acknowledge my existence. And there was a knock at the door, and one of the other comics opened the door, and because he had seniority, and he came and said, "Oi, is there someone out there wanting to speak to you?" I thought, oh, who have I upset now? And it was a woman. And she said hello. I said, hello. I liked your performance. I thought, okay. I didn't know what to say, because I don't think I'd ever heard anyone say that to me before. And she said, "Can I buy you a drink?" I said, "No, it's all right, I got one. See ya." And I think for the next 5 years I cried every night over that. Just like, why? She went out of her way. Not only did she had to go upstairs, she would have had to ask where the room was, go upstairs, and ask for me, and go through that knocking on the door. That was it could have been a degree of bravery involved in doing that, you know. So maybe she liked me. Maybe she could have been the wife I never wanted. You know, it could have been like a fairy tale. I could have got married and had lots of kids, and so yeah, I don't know. But I just can't. I said no. Because I was just being honest. I had a drink. I didn't drink back then. I just used to have a drink of Coke. That was it. And I said, "I got a drink, thanks." And she just turned away. I'm pretty sure she said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, can't you see? Look, it's in my hand." I did. It's like, yeah. The thing is, the door was open. And when I turned around to go back into the room with the other comics, they were just looking at me, like really in astonishment. For the first time, in some kind of amazement, in wonder, like, what is wrong with you? I mean, I always got that look from the other comedians anyway, what is wrong with you? But more genuinely because of my act, and other times because of my personality. But this one was because of almost the stupidity of the situation, because there was no harm in letting somebody buy me a drink. The first person ever in an audience member at that point to ever offer to buy me a drink. It happened once, one other time later on at the Hackney Empire, and that turned into a little adventure, so that was good. But other than that, I didn't have a lot of success really during that time. And the two glory, well, they're called glories, but the two the workers on the building site, they decided to give the hole a name, but they didn't know what to call it. And they all kind of come up and say, let's call it the Glories hole, because the Gloria's hole, because both the ladies behind it were called Gloria. So yeah. Then someone shouted, "Why don't you just shorten it?" I was like, shorten it. And I said to this bloke, I said in the park, "So your name's Jason, why?" I said, "That's my name, by the way." I said, why don't you use it?" And he told me why. I said, okay. He said, "Don't answer to it." I said, "We just did though, didn't you?" He said, "No, I didn't." To be fair, he didn't, but he did look over. but then, you know, a lot of people look over when I'm not wearing any trousers. So it's kind of, it's easier not to call him that. Well, I don't call people by their names anyway, generally, but it's easier if I never knew it was his name, so I kind of knew what his name was from the other lady, because she's his neighbour and she adores him. He looks after her because she's quite elderly. So there's a problem with that though. Okay, I was visiting my step granddad in hospital, which is my stepmum, my second stepmum's father, when he was alive. And so I was visiting him in hospital. He had I can't remember what was going on at that time. So I go over there, and there's no one with that name. I say, okay, there's no one with that name? No. But he's here. He's literally. She starts looking under the desk. He's not here, but he's in this building. She said, that person's not in this building. I said, they are. He said, they're not. I said, she is. She said, what? I said, she is here. I thought you said it was a man. Yeah, Harry could be a man, could be a woman. Well, is it Harriet then? Because I'll check on that one. I said, okay. So he checked on Harriet. And she said, oh, there is a Harriet. She said that to start with, it's Harriet. In fact, their family's just over there. Do you want me to call them over? I said, no, it's okay. It's not Harriet. She said, why did you say it was then? I said, I didn't know it was going to go this far. Why are you wasting my time? I've got a big queue here. I said, it's 6 people. It's not a big queue, is it? She said, it's a fairly large queue. I said, it's 6 people. She said, but if you look at how much distance there is really for people to queue, there's not a lot. You couldn't get more than about another 3 people on the end of the queue before they'd have to start standing like next to each other, and that'd be chaos. I said, I don't know about chaos. It's not really chaos, is it? Trying to light a cigarette in a hurricane, that's chaotic. That's a different. That's you know, we're trying to light a candle in a room full of people that have farted. I don't know. A room full of farts. I don't know. What am I talking about? I do not know. So I went to see my granddad, my step-granddad. His name wasn't on the register. This is a true story. His name was not there. So I phone my stepbrother up. I say, listen, what's going on? I'm asking for him. He's not here. And all the family were meeting up there because he was very ill, and we were meeting there. And he said, no, he is. I said, not here. The man behind the receptionist, he just said that he's not here. Now, the woman behind the receptionist gave me a funny look. See, I couldn't help myself. And this is before it was illegal. Okay, just to let you know that. This is before it was a deadly sin, and you know, it was just like a silly thing to do, but it wasn't. It wasn't morally wrong to do it back then. It was just a bit dumb. So I wasn't being, you know, now I wouldn't dare. Wouldn't dare. Apart from with Vinny. I'll call him a girl all the time. I never thought that something... I mean, I started the whole trend of calling people misgendering. It was just like a joke, messing around, you know. It was never supposed to be taken seriously, and it was definitely not supposed to be used to upset people. You know, some people take it, they like use the tool in the wrong way. It was just supposed to be light jabbering or light ribbing, light poking. you know, like a tender little tickle with a feather. You know, it wasn't supposed to be about upsetting people. It was about just joviality. Or, you know what I mean, when I lived in the place where I lived when I was at college, and I was talking to the landlady, and I said, oh, I wanted to get away. The conversation was going on too long. So I said, oh, I just got to pop to the little girl's room. I turn around and she says, don't you mean the little boy's room? I said, what? You said the little girl's room. Don't you mean... She didn't talk like that. Didn't you mean the little boy's room? I'm confused. Sparks were shooting out of her ears. I said, no, I meant to say it. But why? Why would you say something like that? Why not? How am I going to accidentally say I'm going to the little girl's room? How do you mind you, someone would say, how do I accidentally walk out with underpants on my head when I go shopping? So, you know, there are accidents. But, yeah, we all have accidents sometimes. Ask my bed. So anyway, either a little motorbike kid over there has got his motorbike going, and if he does that, it means he's probably going to have it going all afternoon, like boom, 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 and he likes to play with it. He's a little motorbike fiddler. He likes to play around with it, and I don't know. Or it might be a lawnmower, which will be... Oh no, don't tell me Lawnmower Man's back. He's come back to mow the lawns. He's going to be back for like all day, just mowing one little bit of grass. Then he'll be out painting people's windowsills. I'm painting a world, a little world here for you. So this man in the park, like Jason, I said, well, why don't you call yourself Jason? It's the best name in the world. And he said, it's not. I said, okay. Why? You know, I said, why? He said, oh, I can't remember what you said. Something serious, so I forgot. I wasn't listening. I asked a question. But you ever do that? You ask a question, but then you don't listen. You're just going internally, nah, blah, 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 nah, 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 like you know, fingers in your ears, nah, nah, nah. At least you hope it's internally. I asked someone questions once. I was a policeman, and I said, excuse me, madam, can you tell me where the Tower of London is? Because I was trying to find. And he said, call me madam again, and you'll be living in the Tower of London. We actually had cuddle each other to stop from falling over. It was a very funny moment. And it's then that I realised that I had a thing for uniformed men dressed as little police people. Oh no, that didn't happen. And so I did ask, I think it was a bus driver, got on, asked the bus driver, does this bus go to where I was going? He said no. I said, could you tell him which bus it is? And as he started to talk, I was going in my head, just for some reason, blah 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 blah, no, like for some reason I thought it was in my head. I actually looked up. I saw in the mirror my fingers in my ears and loudly shouting nah 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 nah, which was weird because I didn't realise I was doing it. And then I started to wonder, what other things am I doing out loud that I thought I was doing internally? And then I started thinking, how do people perceive me? People around where I live. Am I perceived in what kind of a way am I perceived? And how in touch with reality am I actually? Did my friend downstairs ever really exist, or did I make him up and everyone's just going along with the story? Like, I don't know. It's weird sometimes. I can't think. Am I? How much of this is real? And the reason I think about that sometimes, I know it kind of is, but the reason I think about it is because when I was a kid, I didn't know the difference between real and not real. Like when I was very young, I didn't know. I genuinely did not know. I used to see things, I used to hear things, and I didn't know the difference between reality and non-reality when I was quite young. And I thought that was, I kind of knew it wasn't normal, but I thought it was normal, but I just, at the same time, I operated better when I was on my own. In a crowd as well sometimes, because I could just like melt into the background, and had to study how people were so that I could act like them. But the problem with that is a lot of the behaviour I saw I didn't like, especially at school. I liked the chilled out people, the calm people, and the funny people, but I didn't like the braggarts, the always showing off. I got this, I got that, I got the best this, I got the best that, and I'm brilliant at this. I thought, I don't want to be like that. But they seem to be the popular ones quite often, and the successful ones. And I didn't want to be like that. But in another way, again, when I was at school, in the first year of school, it was kind of strange because I was put into the middle part of everything. I think in junior school I did was it 11 plus exam or whatever, test. They didn't know what to do with me. I think they must have thought, well, we're not really sure what he is, because I was very behind in pretty much everything. This is true, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I remember my first stepmom said that the teachers and everything, they said it was partly because I'd moved around so much as a little kid that I hadn't had like proper schooling. Like I had not been in the same place, hadn't had the proper foundations of school that most kids have had by the age of 7. I know 7's still young, but then when I was 8, I was told that my lack of knowledge, or my lack of education, or whatever you want to call it, was also due to being partially deaf in one ear. And I discovered that when I was 8. So it wasn't really till I got to 9 that I was kind of working on, I'm going to say all cylinders, I'm going to be very generous with that one, but my ears were working. I had stability in one school for at least 2 years, my last junior school, so 9 and 10, made friends, and kind of, and they didn't know what to do with me as far as what classroom to put me in. But they didn't put me in the lowest one, which I was surprised at. I was pleased because it was they had it by a name. Every year they'd have a name by I don't know if it was I don't know if it was every year was the same, but mine was Osprey, so Osprey. So O was the top, Y was the bottom. S was, near the top. So SP R O O O S O S P, and then R E Y. I was R. So I was sort of, you could possibly, I suppose, bang in the middle, I guess. I think P and R were kind of similar, but R was, closer to the bottom. But I wasn't the bottom, I wasn't Y, although I had a lot of friends that were. So in the first year of high school, I was in the middle, and that's when it's weird because I was in the middle with people that ended up being in the top classes as well, and they're the ones I got on with, the intellectual ones, the really, really clever ones that were way cleverer than me, but I just loved spending time with them because I could hold a conversation with them. I did not have their knowledge, I did not have their academic abilities, but I could communicate with them on a more serious, it was almost like a more of an adult conversation, and I liked it because they were respectful and they were seen a bit more advanced, not socially, because they were a bit kind of, I suppose, a bit like me, very, they were book readers and played musical instruments, and they weren't necessarily into sports or anything like that. Kind of a cliche, I know, but I liked them. There was two together. In fact, there was four of us in the first year of high school. Me, a tall bloke, I can't remember his name, because after the first year, hardly saw them again. I'd still see them to say hello, but and that fizzled out to almost probably not even saying hello to them near the end of the period. But for the first year, I was quite close to them, and because my best friend Dean was never in his class. I think I was in his class for a couple of lessons, but I was never in his form room. So I was in these two's form room, because we was in the English room. That was our form room, which was a place that we went to at the beginning of the day, and then I think at the beginning before, just after lunchtime, and then back before we left for the day. And my form room was, I guess, 1R was the name of the thing. 1R, yeah, for Romeo, or for Osprey, Ray. But it's behind those two rooms that were behind the library. So you could get into the library through the back, which is quite cool. You couldn't really walk, you're not supposed to walk through there to get into the library. You meant to walk all the way around, but because that was my form room, I could just go in and out of the library. And in the library bit, there was the bit where the teachers lived. The library, the English teachers, they had like their room. And yeah, I used to use the library a lot. I used to read a lot of stuff from there. And I've talked about this before, but this was such a big turning point in my academic or my non-academic life. Just needed a little bit of encouragement, I think, because I don't know, I didn't have any really much in the way of self-belief when it came to, I felt good about reading. I loved reading. That was my favourite thing really in the world. Other than watching television, reading was my favourite thing when I was a kid. Loved reading. I liked playing, I liked doing stuff, like a lot of other kids like doing, but I had no interest in sports until I started doing karate. And then I was just absolutely fanatical about it. But before that, I wasn't interested in sports. I didn't class karate as sports. For me, it was more than that. But then, so these three kids, there was a tall one and there was a shorter one. I'm sure one of them had I'm sure one of them had a violin. Maybe there was only three of us. And maybe he's the one that left. But I'm pretty sure there was four of us. And one of them lived around the corner from me. Literally round the corner. It was a 5-minute walk. And his house was like a music shop. The front window, all you could see was musical instruments, and both of his parents were musicians. They lived in a big house, and so I was allowed in there. That was a good thing, because I wasn't always very popular with the parents for some reason. But we used to meet up and go upstairs, right to the top of the stairs. And my friend's room had a desk, and we had a detective agency, and they let me join their detective agency. And we had guns. I mean, not real guns. They were pretend guns. Well, they were guns, but they were pretend, plastic or whatever. And we'd just play detective. And it was brilliant. And it was probably, in some ways, my happiest little period. One of my happiest little periods as a kid, because I'd never had a group before, like a group of friends. This is the first time. And not only that, I had a group in the children's home. We were all, it was more like family. You sleep in a room with 12 other kids. They're basically your brothers, I don't think I'm not sure if the girls slept separate. I can't remember, but it's your family. If you live with someone, you sleep in the same room as them. You're with them all the time, pretty much. They're your family, really, aren't they? At the end of it. So this was the first time that I felt like I was part of a little group, like a tiny little detective agency in the music house. And I just remember that Christmas, because there was this like a toy shop. I can't remember the name of it now. Not Gerlins. It was one of those, because I lived in a little town, and probably the same as a lot of other little towns back then, maybe now as well, I don't know. But there was one shop was where Father Christmas would be. One shop that had the best toys. Like, it just had a bit of room, a bit of space. But that isn't where we used to buy our toys, because Woolworths was the main place. In the 70s and even in the 80s, Woolworths was and probably Boots as well, and WH Smith's. Those were the three shops. Tesco's as well, but generally, as far as the problem with Tesco's, like just groceries as well, I couldn't be bothered to queue up. I mean, sometimes I buy stuff and go to the counter, like cigarette counter, and pay for my stuff there. But I think WH Smith's, Woolworths or Woolies, we used to call it Woolies, and Boots as well, because when I was a kid, Boots, which is we used to call them chemists back then. Now they're called pharmacies, but we used to call them chemists, and they'd actually have the word chemist on the on their display. So I had to check that out. I thought, am I imagining things wrongly. But yeah, it was chemists. And because it was a little town, everything was very close to each other. And Boots used to sell, although it was a chemist, and it had a, pharmacy part where you could get or chemist part where you could get your medication and all that stuff. They also had other stuff, like they'd have a record section. I remember that because that's where I used to buy my records from. And because it used to be right opposite a chip shop, and I got Stevie Wonder's Characters from over there, about 1987. The album Characters. It was on tape, but it was, yeah, I remember that. The thing is, what is weird, okay, so do you ever have these memories? And I have this memory of what's his name? Bros. Okay. So my memory is I saw Bros when they released their album 28th of March 1988. Okay, so I remember buying that album, walking past the chip shop and showing that album to the people in the chip shop. But I also left that chip shop around that time as well. Now, it was released on the 28th of March 1988. The chances of me actually buying it on that exact date is quite rare. Unlikely, to be fair. But it's called Push. Yeah, I loved Bros. So it's like one of those memories that doesn't really fit together, because there's no way I'd be walking in there after leaving, because it was a bit of a sour moment when me and my former boss departed ways. It's it wasn't a nice breakup. So it's very unlikely that I would have just walked in there afterwards and shown that I'd got an album. Strange. You never know though with me. Who knows? So my stepbrother says, he is in the hospital. He's there. I said, well, he's not, because I've just spoken to, and the lady's looking at me from behind the counter in the hospital. I've spoken to the lovely person behind the counter in the reception, and I've been told, making sure I didn't say he, she, them or anything, I've been told that Grandad Harry is not there. And his name is Harry. And he said, then he said, oh, I know what it is. I said, is it because he's not here? Or is it, he said, no, is it because he's at a different hospital? He said, no, that would be because he's not, that would be the same as he's not being here, wouldn't it? I said, yeah, I suppose. Because that has happened before. I went and visited my nan. My dad told me that my nan was in hospital, so I left work. I wasn't going to go to work. I wasn't going to leave work, because I got, when you get a text, like, can you phone or whatever, it might just, so I went to the toilet, phoned my dad. Oh, she's in hospital. She was very poorly at that time. It was, and it was a couple of years, about a year or a half or before she left. So I go back to my desk. This is in the office, and I start crying. Like I kind of, not externally. It's a weird one. It's not like I was. I wasn't like squirting tears over everyone. It wasn't that kind of situation. I didn't not. My colleagues weren't sort of sitting there with umbrellas, but I could not just continue like normal, because the idea was I was going to perhaps go and see her after work, but I went to my boss and said, like, I got to go. And he said, well, I can see whether or not we can let you go. I'll go and speak to the other manager. I said, no, you misunderstand me. I'm not asking for permission. I said, I got to go. With respect, which I was, but I'm going anyway, just letting you know. And he said, he understood, so it was cool. I didn't get discipline or anything, but second time that's happened happened when I was in London. This was delayed though, because I found out my nan broke her hip on the Sunday evening. So I'm thinking, I've got to go to work on a Monday. Or no, I think it was Wednesday evening. I get this phone call. So I contact my dad. She's in hospital. It happened like 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, but now she was in convalescence. It was a weird one. They couldn't contact me or something. Because I'd basically been kicked out of where I was living, so I didn't have anywhere to live for a while, and it was all a little bit up in the air, so I wasn't able to be contacted. Anyway, I went to work the next day because I think it was Thursday, Friday. I'll just do Thursday, Friday, and I'll go up there the weekend and see her. I realised that she was going to be okay and that she'd gone through everything and she was convalescing. I think she had a couple of weeks or 3 weeks in convalescence, and then she was going to go back to where she lived. Went to work, couldn't couldn't. And again I said, I got to go. I went downstairs into the toilet and cried. Now I don't know what the person in the stall or the toilet next to me was thinking. All he could hear was going, oh, oh, mm. That's how I cry. Oh yeah. Some people think it's a weird way to cry, but oh my goodness. So yeah, I left on that occasion as well. So I went straight there, and I did. Yeah, it's weird because I never went back to work. I stayed there for a few days, and I found a job because I wanted to be closer to my nan. After that, I realised that because I was living in London, I didn't get to see her as often, and I thought, no, got to make changes. So I did. So I ended up moving, not to the same town, but just outside, because I got a job that was in a different town, and that travelling would have been harsh. So I got somewhere close to where I was living. Technically, I probably temporarily could have perhaps stayed with my nan, just until I found somewhere to live in that town and being a bit closer. But there was one time actually when I just started college, 2007, and I was looking for somewhere to live. I found somewhere in the town that she was living, but I was going to have to travel for about 2 hours a day to get to university. It wasn't going to be an easy trip, you know. It's a long journey. Plus, there was so much involved in being there and where I was going to have to go. And I managed to find somewhere a bit closer in the actual town, or on the outskirts of that town. Plus, I don't know, there was something about the lady that I was going to rent from. Didn't quite seem, I don't know, didn't get a good vibe from the place. But I did give a deposit because I just needed somewhere. I was desperate to find somewhere to live, because I was homeless pretty much. I didn't have anywhere to go, and I didn't realise when I told my nan, "Oh, I'm not moving to your town now. I found somewhere closer to the university." She hung up on me. She didn't. She was upset, disappointed. I didn't realise. Yeah. But by then it was like too late. I went back to get the deposit from the lady. She wouldn't give it back. You'd only had it for a day. I said, "Well, can I get some of it back?" "Nope." I said, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yep, you're not getting it back." So I said, "So for one day, you're gonna have £100 for just keeping a room open for one day. You're gonna have £100, because I think there's about £100 deposit or something. £100." She said, "Yeah." Oh, I was like, wow. But I had to let it go. I was just like, okay. It's weird. But I said to him, "Why don't you like being called Jason? It's the best name." And he said, "I just don't like the name. I just don't like it. Just prefer the one I've got." He said, "My family called me Jason, like at home. But everyone else, all my friends, all call me the name that you know me as." And I said, "Okay, fair enough." It was weird. It's like, I try, you know, if someone, there was once, years ago, when I was working at a Buddhist shop, there was someone turned up. I hadn't met the bloke. I became friends with him, but I didn't know him. And I was told, "Oh, we've got someone new working here, starting today." I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Oh, just let you know his name." I said, "Okay." Like they're really building up something, like, you know, why are you making a big deal about his name? They said, "Well, his name is Free Spirit." I said, "Okay, what's his real name?" They said, "Yeah, that's his real name." I said, "No, what is his actual name?" Right, I was just interrupted by Vinny barking. Can't remember what I was talking about then. So it's so annoying. You just heard someone slam the door and suddenly he's ruff, 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 ruff. But I don't know what it was I was discussing. I'm sure it was interesting. Oh yeah, Free Spirit. So I thought, what's his real name? That's his name. That's his name on his passport. I said, I was just about to ask that. And they said, "Yeah, I thought you were." Okay. I said, "Well, I'm not calling him Free Spirit. That's his name." "No, it's ridiculous." This is back in 2004. So I was a little bit more, I don't know what the word would be. Less, I don't have to, nice maybe, I don't know what the word is, but I just thought it was ridiculous. I've never been a big fan of people changing their names. Just have the name. If you don't like it, just you know, it's like people introducing themselves as Jay, like people with my name, or people, you can get people called Jason, Jamie, introduce themselves as Jay. No, that's not your name, is it? It's Jason, or it's James, or it's Jamie. No, my name's Jay. No, it's not your name though, is it? So I would never ever, I mean, I get called, I'll answer to anything, I don't care. And everyone around here calls me Jay. People, I've had girlfriends call me Jace, JC. I like to call myself Juicy JJ, as you possibly know. But, you know, I would never introduce myself like, I don't know, if I met someone who said, oh, well, you know, I've been seeing you with Vinny, and I know Vinny's name and you know my dog's name, but what's your name? Oh, I'm Juicy JJ. No, I'm Jay. No, I've never called myself Jay. But then both my brothers, I'm getting excited now, aren't I? Both my brothers, my older brothers, no, all three of my brothers have got shortened names, and I've never called them by their shortened names. Now, admittedly, I haven't seen one for 31 years, or 30 years. So apart from that, but his name's shortened, my other name's shortened, the other one's shortened. Everyone calls him instead of you know. And then the other one, the younger one, everyone calls him it's not you know. I'm not going to say their names, but I can't do that. I've known them as their names. I'm not going to call them by a nickname or a shortened version, because they're not my friends. They're my brothers. You know? Another thing I never used to understand, why would someone called Simon change the same name to Si? I don't mind that, actually. I knew someone called Simon who was like an older brother to me, and he left the world too early. So yeah, I don't mind that. Si's fine, but Steve, and then Stee. Like Si works. I still think you're shortening a very short name. Simon is a short name, but Si, fair enough, it's quite a good name, Si. Steve, like Stephen, Steve is short for Stephen. But these days, I'm saying that like I'm an old fart when I say that, quite often they're not named, don't seem to do the long names anymore. So someone will just be called Steve. Now, back in my day when I was born, I don't think anyone would be born Steve. They'd be born Stephen, Stephen, or maybe Stefan, Stepfen, and then it'd be shortened to Steve. But now, the last, 30 years or whatever, it seems to have changed. 20 years, it seems to have changed, and people are just giving their names. Like Debbie. Debbie used to be short for Deborah. But now, not just now, for the last 40 odd years, people calling their kids Debbie. Like, it's a shortened version of Deborah. It's Deborah. Don't ever say that to someone called Debbie. You right, Deborah? It's not my name. My name's Debbie. Or send the birthday cards that says Deborah. Or Christmas cards. Don't do it for 30 years. I've been doing that to my stepsister. I decided, she said it's Debbie, not Deborah. She was 7 when she said it, and it just made me laugh. So since then I've just called her Deborah. It's Debbie. All right, Deborah. It's Debbie. Oh, it was a bit childish of me. I was like 21, 22 at the time. And yeah, a bit childish. She's now in her 50s. Stee. mean, Steve is such a short name anyway, and to say it, Steve, takes just as much effort and it lasts just as long as Steve. The good thing about Steve is there's a beginning and an end. Steve. Steve. In fact, it could last longer than Steve. So in some ways, you're elongating it. Steve. 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 I don't see the point in it. I've known a few people called that, and I just don't get it. Just, it's Steve, but then Steve used to be short for Stephen. I'm so sure people are now called Steve. They don't realise they're named after the Bionic Man, Steve Austin. If only they knew. Steve. Jason is actually shorter than J. I guess it depends on how long you keep the A going. J. Jason. J. Juicy JJ. Juicy. I can't introduce myself to people as Juicy, can I? You know what I mean? It's like, that's probably... It's not a good introduction at a job interview, is it? It's, I suppose, you know, Jason. You know, the amount of people that correct my surname. I go in and say, so can I take your name? So when I collect the pharmacy, prescriptions, or when I phone up the doctor's surgery, in the days when we were allowed to phone them up, now we have to do everything online. Can't just book an appointment anymore. I'm just going to start moaning, so I'll stop. So in the past, I phoned up the doctor's surgery and said, yeah. They said, who is it? I said, oh, can I take your name, please? No, they wouldn't just say, who is it? Who is it? What do you want? I said, it's Jason Newland. Oh, Jason Newland. They correct me. And the pharmacy the same. Oh, Jason Newland. There's Vinny. Do you hear that? He's a little bit of barking. Seriously, Vinny, think twice. Think twice. Don't stick your ears down like you're scared. Blimey. I'm just saying, just be quiet. Be calm. Just a little bit calm for Daddy Waddy while I do my little podcasty-wasty. Okay? Good girl. So, it turned out, I'm speaking to my stepbrother, that Harry was my step-granddad's middle name. After all that, it was his middle name. And his first name was, I don't even remember what it was, like Roger or something. So it's like, okay. And apparently, when he was in hospital, it did cause problems with the prescriptions and with the nurses, because they didn't know who he was. Because someone put down Harry, and no one knew who Harry was. They put it on the board, Harry, above, because they have a little whiteboard that they write on. It's almost like, use the name that you got on your birth certificate, especially when it comes to medical stuff. Just use that name. Ugh. I mean, my dad, when he moved in, I'm moaning about my dad all the time. No, this is a thing that a little bit bugbear that I've got, is people that name their houses. Now, it started off as being something that just annoyed me, but now I've seen in action why. I could foresee why it was a problem, and then I saw twice why it can actually, more than twice, why it can be a problem. So my dad moved into this house. I lived there for about a month when he moved in. It's about 1990 and September, and he called the name. He named the house. I don't know. It had a number of the road, but he named it as well. I can't even remember the name of it. And whenever I sent a letter or a card, I would always ignore the name of the house, and he would question me, why don't you put the name of the house? I said, because all we need is a number. Yeah, but it's got a name. He had a plaque and everything, like lights pointing towards it, and planes going past saying, use the name. But I just like, what's the point? Just give it. It's a number. So I never used that, but it was something that just like, this was 1990, 91, 92. Didn't see any point in it. And then when I was in my 30s, a couple of times I saw ambulances literally stop me, because I lived in this area and it was full of houses, cottages with names. They also had numbers, but they had names on there. So they were looking for the address. So somebody had called an ambulance, which meant they were in need of immediate medical care. It's kind of obvious, I guess. Yeah, they've given some silly name for a house instead of giving a number, which is much easier to find, because there's, not always, but quite often there's a degree of numeral congruence when it came, like number 1, then number 3, then number 5, the other side, 2, 4, 6. Not always, but it's a lot easier if you're looking for number 9. If you can find number 5, then you've only got 2 doors either side, and you're going to find the house. And this is at night, so they couldn't see the house names, but they could see the numbers, because a lot of the things that have numbers outside the front on the gates and stuff, or the postal boxes things. And I really, like, twice I saw that. People I think it happened here again, that's 3 times, where they're looking around and they couldn't find it. But that was more to do with not the house, but just the lighting is so bad now. When I moved in here, the street lights were on. I think they were on all night, and then they turned them off at 1 o'clock, and then they changed all the lights, so there's almost probably half the light that it used to be. So I can hardly even see the ground or where I'm stepping anymore at night, because it's so dull. You wouldn't be able to read a book standing underneath one of them. I don't think I wouldn't. And before, they used to be bright. So I realise it's just cost cutting. But once 1 o'clock comes, or even before that, even when it's in the night time, even at like 7 o'clock in the winter, people driving, they can't see the numbers. I know they've got sat nav and stuff, but it's still quite difficult to find places. It's easier for the ambulance to find this place because they've come here so often. This building's been regularly visited by police and ambulance over the years. This whole little estate that I live on, it's very well known by the police and the ambulance. So that's not necessarily a good thing for them, but it's definitely handy. And I've also seen the same kind of problem with people that have house names where they get deliveries, food deliveries, maybe Amazon or pizzas and stuff. I saw this, especially at night, when they can't see the houses. Or these cottages, they'd have the house name in the porch, but the house number outside the gate. And it'd be so grown over, because not grown over in a bad way, but lots of plants and trees and flowers. So you couldn't see the sign anyway, unless you could see it. I suppose that's a time when you could see it. I don't know why I'm talking about house names. probably not something to get too worked up about, is it? Damn. I mean, he ended up being a good friend of mine, Free Spirit, but I was really adamant I'm not calling him Free Spirit. I ended up not calling him Free Spirit, I called him Free. And it's weird, even what I would have classed as a really silly name back then, before I got to know him, but I was like, it became normal. Talk about Free Spirit. It wasn't the word itself, the two words together no longer had the same meaning as they did before. It was him, his face, him. And I cared about him, so he was a good bloke. And yeah, it's weird. I remember someone told me that he was in trouble. He'd moved out. He'd gone to live with. He was really wanting to have a girlfriend, and which is fine. But he used to do a lot of online dating and stuff like that. And he moved away to be with someone that lived, I think, in Scotland or somewhere, like a long, long, long way away. And someone told me, oh, I heard in the grapevine that Free Spirit's in trouble. I said, what do you mean? He said, I think he's homeless. I said, what? So I phoned him up. So at this time, I'm still living in a Buddhist community. He'd moved out of the Buddhist community probably 5 months earlier. I phoned him up and said, are you alright? He said, no. He said, I think I'm going to lose two of me toes. I said, why? He said, I'm on a mountain in Scotland camping, and I've got nothing. I've got no. He still had his motorbike, but he didn't have any income or anything. And I said, well, just come back here. He said, I've got nowhere to stay. I said, we stay here. And he said, but what if the others don't want me to stay there? I said, you'll stay here as my guest, regardless of what they want. And I was very forceful. I was ever so proud of myself. And so I said, just get yourself here, which he did. I think he managed to find someone to borrow money off to get petrol, and he came back. And he just went back into the same room as he was before. But before he got back, we just basically fed him and made sure he was okay because he was a courier, so he could get work quite easily. Just got him back to health a bit. He didn't lose his toes, but it was in the middle of winter. It wasn't a good time to be sleeping outdoors, and that wasn't his first choice, to be fair. And so that night, I got everyone together in the Buddhist community. There was 1, 2, 3 people living there, I think, at the time, and me. And I said, Free's just contacted Free. He's in Scotland and he's in a really bad way, so I've told him to come back here. And a couple of them said, oh, yeah, we haven't taken a vote on it. We have to talk about this. I said, no. There's no conversation. I said, he's coming back here, that's it. And because normally I have to have a big long conversation, maybe spend the next 3 months discussing whether or not we want him to have him back, and what's he going to bring to the community, and he left before, so maybe he wasn't happy before, and were we happy with him before, and what could he do to change? I said, none of that. He's coming back here, and if you kick him out, you kick me out as well, because he's our friend. And they just like, I kind of put my foot down. I don't put my foot down very often and stuff like this, but I said, he's homeless and he's hungry and he's in a bad way. He needs somewhere to stay, so he's going to stay here as my guest. Going forward, if you want to have a big conversation about whether he stays here or not, we can do that later on, but right now he's staying as my guest, and I'm going to put him up in the room downstairs. If you find someone else that wants to live here, if someone else that needs that room, then we can discuss it, you know, whether he wants to stay or. But he ended up living there longer than I did then. So I ended up moving out and he stayed. But it's weird because someone moved in there, and me and Free, we used to have a bit of a weird friendship. We used to sometimes moan at each other because we got on really, really well. But sometimes I'd moan at him and he'd moan at me, but what he'd do though, when I moaned at him, he'd just stand there, and there was someone else who was just moved in and they came to his rescue. He didn't need rescuing. It wasn't that. That's a younger person would say. It wasn't that deep, you know. It was just me having a moan, but it wasn't serious. It wasn't anything. But this person decided you shouldn't talk like that. But me and him were close. We had that relationship where we could, good, quite humorous connection, and we stayed friends for years afterwards as well. But anyway, this caused a big problem between me and that other person, and in the end I had to move out. It was difficult, my friend. It was. And he used to get a lot of problems when he'd go travelling because his name was Free Spirit, and they didn't believe it. What's your real name? Or if he got stopped on his motorbike, what's your name? It's Free Spirit. By the police, no, what's your real name? It's Free Spirit. Have you got your passport? No. But he was on his driving licence, so he did change everything by deed poll. I think he even had a credit card or debit card with it. But he still used to get stopped when he went abroad because he's a bit of a traveller and stuff, and still used to people interrogate him, what's your real name? So that was it really. The thing that I liked, I know I've sort of talked about this before, but the three lads, the detective agency, there's something about, I liked being around people that were cleverer than me. Because, it's not about being around people who are cleverer than me if they're talking down to me, if they're making fun of me. I didn't feel that they were. They might have been, but I didn't feel that they were. Like I was being treated as an equal. And I was very sad because one of them, the one that lived in the house, the musical house, he lived upstairs, and that's where the office was, where the detective agency office was. And he had all paperwork and all kind. It was so impressive. And I used to go up and see him, even without the other kids. So I really liked him. He was organised and he was intellectual, and he was just had loads of books, and I don't know. We technically didn't have much in common, in a sense, really. But on the other side, we kind of did as well, And he broke it to me. He said, "Oh, I've got some bad news for you." It was almost, this is in the first year of high school, so I was 11. And he said, "We're moving away." I said, "Is it because of me?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Is it because your parents don't like me and they want to move you away so you don't have to be badly influenced by me?" He said, "No, it's not the only reason." I said, "Okay." I don't know. I don't know where they moved, but it was out of town to a different place. So I never saw him again. But I was sad, and he seemed quite sad as well. And that was it. He was gone. And a similar situation with the girl that lived in not a monastery, a vicarage. And her dad, she invited me to a birthday party, the only birthday party I ever got invited to. And she told me that she was moving away as well. Then there was a teacher that said they were moving away. There's a bit of a pattern here, isn't there? Do you ever wonder if one day you can just go travelling, or you go to a different town, different part of the country, and you go somewhere and you start seeing people that look familiar. Wherever you go, there's someone that looks familiar, and you realise all those people, the town is full of people that moved away from where you lived. Just happened to end up in the same place, almost like they moved away to get away from me. Like a whole town's worth of people that faked their death, and yeah, wow. Maybe not. So I haven't really got down to much of the website stuff. What I have done is on the first page of the website, the website homepage, there is now like a little index, or not index, what's the right word, navigation thing. There's 4 things you can click on right at the top of the homepage. So podcasts, playlists, podcast apps, and contact form. Not sure if I really need the contact form. Maybe I might change that to something else later down the road. But click on podcasts, and that's all the podcasts I got. Then you click on there and it goes to the podcast. So it's quite easy. And playlists, click on the playlists. It lists, at the moment it's only 4 podcasts. Let Me Bore You to Sleep, ASMR, Deep Sleep Whisper, Hypnosis, Relax and Sleep Hypnosis Daily, and Relaxation for Stress and Panic Attacks. So there's 4. They're all up to date as far as the without music ones. So they're all done. So there's them. Then you've got podcast apps. So that's all the different podcast apps that I'm on, that I could find. So Apple Podcasts, Audible, Amazon Music, Podcast app, Castbox, Deezer, Luminary, Podcast Republic, Player FM, Podcast Addict, Podcast Index, Podchaser, Podfriend, Podverse, Podbean, Spreaker, Spotify, and SoundCloud. So if you click on any of those, it then brings up the images of all the different podcasts I've got to choose from. The ones that are like faded out so you can hardly see them, that means there's no link there. And then, for example, Let Me Bore Your Pain Away, click on that one. This is on Apple Podcasts, and that podcast comes up. So, it's the same with all of them. So it's pretty good. I'm quite pleased with it, actually. Let's go for another one. Podchaser. And let's look for Q&A Friday. Click on Q&A Friday on Podchaser. Where is it? Recent episodes. Why is it not updated it? 16th of May. It hasn't been updated for some reason. I don't know why. I wonder if there's a way of updating it. Maybe just taking its time. So 16th of May was the last one that's on there, but the last Q&A Friday was the 23rd of May. How unusual. So anyway, we go to a different one. Let me see. Let Me Bore You to Sleep. Hopefully that's up to date. Q&A Friday, 23rd of May. So that's up to date. I don't know. So sometimes they update themselves. Sometimes it's a little bit of difference. It takes a while. And let's go down to Podbean, and let's click on Jason's Bedtime Story Time. And 96 episodes. Wow. Okay, because there's a few with all 6 versions. The last one I did was number 31, Alice Needs a Poo. 4th of January 2025. Possibly a time to do a new one. I imagine there's at least one person listening that's thinking, yeah, that's a good idea. At least one person. I know who that person is. I don't know who that person is. I've got no idea. So, yeah, this is, I think, maybe there's another way of doing this though. I'm just thinking. So if I'm searching podcasts, then I've got podcast apps. Podcasts, in a way, that'd be, would it be, no, it's alright. And then playlists. Playlists is definitely, that's cool. So playlists, yeah, it seems to work okay for me. I think it's alright, and it works on the mobile phone, or the mobile phone, if you call it that, the mobile. So yeah, it takes a fair bit because I'm using codes. I'm putting in my own code in order to make things work. There's a lot of testing, so I'm quite, because I've got the background of knowing HTML code for websites, although I haven't really sort of built stuff by code on my own for a long time, I'm able to tinker around with it and figure out what's wrong sometimes, not all the time. But on this occasion, I was having a lot of problem with getting them both together and having them linking up to where I wanted them to link. But I could do it because I could look at the code and see, oh, wait a minute, that needs to be changed. And I changed them, and it works perfectly. I'm saying that now. Hopefully it's going to continue to work perfectly. But at the moment, if I just click on home, yeah, podcasts, playlists, podcast apps, and contact. Then down below that is, they're the small images, small little buttons to press. And then below that is, where is it? Oops. Please support my free service. There's a PayPal link. And join Jason Newland's Boring Group on Facebook. Join. There's a little picture of Vinny pointing to it, yeah. So that will take you to that group as well. So there's still a fair bit to do. But yeah, it's alright. I watched the boxing last night, and Moses Atuma, he's so good. I kind of see now why they're building him up gradually and not putting him in deep waters straight away, because I can kind of see it now. He was destined potentially to beat Mike Tyson's record for the youngest heavyweight champion ever, but he's too late now. He'd have to win a world title this next month, I think, or this month, in order to beat Mike Tyson's record. So he's not going to be doing that because he just had a fight on last night. So I can kind of see what they're doing now, but it's so spectacular. No, it's spectacular. If he can do what he does with, because he hasn't fought anyone a big name yet, but yeah, it's just he hasn't fought at He's not even fought at British level yet, not really. You know, so I don't know if he's going to bother going down that route, because he's possibly going to have a world title fight at the end of the year, according to his manager. But he needs to go in with a name, like a bigger name, someone that's one of the best in this country. That's kind of the normal kind of routine, route rather, for boxers in this country. You know, they win the English title, then they win the British title, then they win the European title, then they win the Commonwealth title, and then they go on to fight for a world title. So it's not always the case, but it can often be that kind of process. So, you know, they become the best in England in their weight category, technically, I suppose, if they hold the belt. Then they become the best in Britain, then they become the best in Europe, and then the best in the Commonwealth. And they're ready for taking on the best in the world. It's a sort of a natural progression. He doesn't seem to be going down that route. But apparently he's going to fight again in 2 months, so I'm looking forward to that. I don't want to have to wait another 5 months or 6 months between fights if he's not going to fight anyone that's going to give him, I don't know, I'd just love to see him against a big name. Not I don't mean like anyone at the top, but just a name that everyone knows of, like Zilig Zhang or Chisora or Dillian White or Dave Allen even. That'd be interesting. Well, the only person I don't want to see him fight is, I don't want to see him fight Fabio Wardley, because I love Fabio Wardley. I love Moses. Both of them, I don't want them to fight. I want them to let them both be world champions. Plus, they're stablemates. It doesn't mean they can't fight each other, but they're kind of, you know, they've discussed it. But I'm a fan of both. In the same way with Frank Bruno when he fought Lennox Lewis. I like both. I love Frank Bruno, and I was a big fan of Lennox Lewis, because it was clear to me that he was going to be, you know, champion. And I think at that point he was champion when he fought Bruno. But I'd followed Lennox Lewis right from the very start. Frank Bruno, he'd already started before I followed him, because I was very young. But I'd followed him for years. I was a huge fan of Frank Bruno. So when Frank Bruno fought Lennox Lewis, I wanted Frank to win, but I didn't really want them to fight. You know, I'd rather Frank fight someone else for a world title. I didn't want to see Lennox Lewis have to, and it was a shame, because it put a dent in Lennox Lewis's career, not career, but his reputation, because Frank Bruno was the darling. He was the hero of this country, boxing wise. And a similar thing happened with Henry Cooper and Joe Bugner. So Henry Cooper was an absolute hero, and because he knocked down Ali when Ali was Cassius Clay. Didn't win, but he knocked it. He knocked him, pretty much nearly knocked him out. But anyway, Henry Cooper was a big hero, and then Joe Bugner came along, much younger man, and he never people didn't seem to forgive him for beating up Henry Cooper in this country. And a similar thing with Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes. A lot of people didn't forgive Larry Holmes for winning against Ali when Ali was not able to really do it anymore. wasn't his fault, was it? Blimey. So yeah. So I'm looking forward to what happens between them, but I don't want them really fighting each other. I want to see Fabio win a world title, and I want to see Moses. I mean, even if he does come unstuck against someone, you know, they put him in with someone too good too soon, the skill and the power he's got, he can come back and still win a world title. It's almost definite that he's going to win a world title. I know there's nothing definite, but it's, to me, I would put it in the same category as definite as Mike Tyson winning the world title. When I used to watch him before he won a world title, before he fought for one, and Nigel Benn as well. It's almost like, they're going to win a world title. Anthony Joshua is going to win a world title. There's no two ways about it. It just almost looks like that's Lennox Lewis. He was going to be world champion. There was no way he wasn't going to be. Frank Bruno, I believed that. But after a few attempts, I kind of wasn't sure, to be honest. But then he did get it in 95. So, with Moses Atuma, I believe he's going to be world champion. And because he's 20, they do make a big deal about him being so young, which I kind of understand. But he might be doing what Mike Tyson did and peaked. Because I'm sure they're going to be... I want to hear some of the commentators during one of his fights saying, oh, wait till he gets his man strength. Which is such a silly thing to say. No one said that about Mike Tyson when he was knocking out people twice his size. No one, when he won the world title at 20, no one was saying, oh, well, wait till Mike Tyson gets his man strength. I don't remember once ever hearing, you know, later on when he was like 25, 26, oh, he's got his man strength now. No, he's always... He developed early. He was at his peak at the age of 19, Mike Tyson. 20, 21. After that, he was never that good again. He was still great, but he wasn't still good, but he wasn't at the same level. After 1990, he never got that back. You know, it was. Oops, I have to get rid of that metal thing. It's got this metal thing underneath the desk. I don't even know why it's on there. I mean, what use is it other than just to bang my hand on? So I watched that last night. It was weird. Also, I won't spoil, but there was another fight on, and the commentators were talking as if one person had obviously won, and then I just skipped through to the end, and the other person won. Okay, but one of the not a commentator, but he was kind of one of the kind of commentators in the background, said, well, I think the other one might have won it. And they were, no. And he had won it. So I skipped back and just watched through it. And the other boxer, it wasn't like one-sided, but it was definitely, you'd have thought it was one-sided the other way from the way the commentators were talking. It's the bias, isn't it, I guess. Anyway, I might have been talking for a long time tonight, or today. It's now 3 o'clock, and it was about 1 o'clock, wasn't it? Let me have a look. Freaky chair. Right, 1 hour and 50 minutes. I didn't really get to talk much about the website. Oh well. So I'm going to go. Thank you for listening. Remember to be kind to yourself because you do deserve to be happy. And be gentle with yourself because you deserve flappy ears. No, you don't deserve flappy ears. He's just flapped his ears. Be gentle with yourself because you do deserve to feel safe. Lots of love. Vinny. Bye. What do you want? What do you want? You smell like a little doggy. You smell like a little doggy. A little doggy. You little doggy. Wee 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 wee. I don't know what I know what he does want, but I haven't got anything to give him. Maybe give you a bit of pizza later. Meow. Okay, so I'm going. Bye.